So this is Marjorie. I'm going to be leading our webinar today. So we are going to be talking about, this is going to be kind of a multi-part series, but talking about job costing. And the job costing part for me starts with estimates. And job costing does not just have to mean construction, right? This could be internal jobs. This could be, you know, we have some customers that they run conventions, so we put in an estimate for estimated cost reporting. There's a lot of different ways that we can utilize estimates. So anytime somebody says, I need to know basically a budget at a different level than customer as a whole, right? Or class, which is how you can segment budgets, then we'll say, okay, well, let's start looking at the possibilities of what you can do with an estimate. So this is really the start of job costing. But again, it can be used outside of construction. So there's lots of different ways that we help customers to understand how they can utilize these additional features and get better data. So what we're going to be doing today is we are going to, so here, right, this is what we're always trying to, our goal is get data to make decisions. That's what we want to help people do. Set your system up to get data to make decisions. So we're going to be going through estimates today. We're going to talk about settings that we need to enable. We're going to create an estimate in two different ways, and then we'll talk about the reporting that is available around estimates and things that you might want to consider exporting and utilizing outside of. But you can see all of that. Now, I normally like to do everything in the QuickBooks Online Advanced sample file so that y'all can follow along. But unfortunately, that sample file this morning was not working with custom fields and estimates. I did see a note that they removed the magic wand reports that I call the magic wand, right? The high-level reports from the QuickBooks Online Advanced sample file. So it might have something to do with that, but it wasn't working. So I apologize if you cannot follow along. But let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, when it comes to estimates and job costing as a whole, we do want to have particular settings set up first. We want to come in here under sales, and then we want to make sure that we have, now they do say custom fields here, but you actually do it in another place. So I just wanted to acknowledge that in case your eyes went there. But we do have down below here to track quantity, price, rate. So we do want to make sure that that's on, okay? And that just adds the quantity times the rate as opposed to just having an amount on a line item. And then we have progress invoicing. So this doesn't need to be turned on necessarily for what we're doing, but anytime we're doing anything with estimate, I mean, it's not normal per se for, I mean, it can be an estimate, one estimate turns into one invoice. That can be a thing, but a lot of times estimates turn into multiple invoices. So having this progress invoicing enabled is a big part of that. And then we have the advanced settings down here. We want to make sure always that class and location tracking is on. Again, if you're not using these fields just so that you can have data to report on, you know, it's something we should consider and talk about because it's a way to segment your data, right? That's what we're trying to figure out. Is this product line more profitable than that product line? Is this sales rep more profitable than that sales rep? Is this, right? So it's just ways that we can create reports. So turning those categories on is important. And then projects. So when we're talking about estimates, projects definitely want to be turned on, and I'll show you the reason why here in a minute, okay? Coming out of there, we also want to talk a little bit about custom fields when it comes to job costing reporting, etc. Well, hopefully we'll get there. Well, on this page we got there. Okay. I don't know. All right, so when we set up custom fields, again, it's just additional amounts of information so that we can track something more, right? Like lead source, how did they hear about us? Sales rep has to be a custom field. purchase order number. There's a lot of different things that need to be project manager, right? There's a lot of different things that we can add to custom fields. But for an estimate, if we were going to add it, I'm going to pretend that we're adding sales rep again, even though it's already there. You would select a data type. I always suggest using a drop-down list, always suggest using a drop-down list, because otherwise the consistency of the reporting is very difficult, okay? And when we use a drop-down list on the custom reports, which you'll see here in a little bit, then you can subtotal by, right, or group by these drop-down lists, which is something in QBO that is unique that QuickBooks Desktop doesn't do. So pretty cool. So I'm going to do a drop-down list, and I'm going to say, you know, Marjorie, Kat, Bill, right? Those are all my sales reps. Okay. Now I want to add the sales rep to the transaction because we're talking about estimates, not to the customer list, not to the vendor list, not to the project list. Well, you could add it to projects, I guess, as well, but I'm going to want it to show up on transaction. And then down below here, you can choose which transaction you want to show up on, and if you want it to be printed on the form when you print it out and send it to the customer or not. Okay, so custom fields are very powerful. When it comes to setting up things like estimates, a lot of times when clients come to us, they have a lot of custom fields that they want to have set up. I'm scared. Yeah, I'm not going to save it. Okay, I'm nervous. I don't know what is happening with custom fields in my QuickBooks Online instance right now. All right, so and again, all of these things, right, putting this stuff in information into the system, if we are not having to present it to a customer, meaning having to print it out, nor are we reporting on it, then we should be discussing whether or not that needs to be in our system, right? So all of these things, if I, like PO number, probably not going to report on PO number, but most likely need it to be customer facing on their document. So PO number, yes, I need that field there. Lead source, probably not going to be customer facing, they don't care, but lead source, do I want to run some reports to see how many estimates I created that came from my Google ads that I did versus how many came from a conference that I did? Yeah, for sure, right? And so that's a reporting custom field that I would be having set up. Okay. All right, so let's go through and create an estimate. So first of all, if I come in here and just go to new and estimate, you can see I could choose a customer, right? All the customers are in here. I can also choose a project from here. So I can choose the kitchen project. I'm going to point that one out because you can see in a little bit, we're going to go look at it in projects. Down below, I can put in service date, product, description, quantity, and rate, right? Because we enabled that feature or that setting, and amount and class. Okay. So all of those things are here. Now, what a lot of people are used to seeing when it comes to estimates is the estimated cost and amount, right? So it's taking it a little bit further. So if I go straight through new and create estimate, then that's not going to work. I have to instead come here over to projects and do project estimate. Okay, so here, that's one way. I'm going to show you another way to navigate just because it's helpful to know all the ways. When I come down to projects themselves, I can click into a project, and then I can add a project estimate from here as well. Okay, so both of those things are the same. So instead of just looking for estimate, we're looking for project estimate. And you notice when I open up this type of transaction, it says project cost estimate instead of just estimate. Okay, so that's how we know we're in the right spot. When we do that, then we have service date. So I'm going to put today. I can choose a product. I'm going to do installation, quantity, 50 hours of installation. Your cost, this is your cost. I estimate that my cost is going to be $25 an hour. I can put in the customer price rate, right, 50, and it backs into my markup, or I can put in a markup and it'll create my rate. Okay. And then, tax, billable class, all the things. Okay. So I can go ahead and save this project cost estimate. And actually, I'm going to make this kitchen 2, or add a new project so that we can keep it separate. Hold on, let me go add a new project. Leave without saving, and I'm going to go back to all projects and create a new project called kitchen 2. And it's ABC store, and save that. And then add to this one a project estimate so we can track along the way. So I have in here my installation, 50 hours at $25, 200% markup, right? And then I can add any other fields if I need to. Okay. Notice here I have lead source, Google, Yahoo. I have 2 just because in our push sample files, they get pretty abused. So I'll put Bing in there as well. I do have a PO number field, but I can go ahead and save this project cost estimate. Okay. So that's how to create the estimate. There's a whole bunch of other fields in here. I'm not going to go through the invoicing. We're going to do that in a future video. So now we're going to talk about reporting around just the estimates themselves. Okay. So when I come in here to my project reports, there are project profitability. That's going to be actual results, right? Estimate is talking about an estimate is a non-posting transaction. So by just putting the estimate in the system, I'm not going to see on anything yet under project profitability because I don't have any actual results. I don't have any actual charges, actual invoices, right? So no posted transactions have happened yet. So there wouldn't be anything here. Time and cost, I haven't put anything in there. No, I haven't put any unbilled time and cost, but we do have estimate versus actual. Okay, so there is an estimate versus actual report down below here. If I click into the one for the one I just created, right? I don't have anything yet. So let me go down to a project that has some details in it. Okay. And pull up my estimate versus actual. So you can see here I have some estimated costs. That's what is pulling from the estimate. And it is totaling by item. Okay, so this is hours is an item on my items list. Subscription is an item on my items list. Not specified down here is because I had a cost that was not tied to an item. That went directly to the chart of accounts account on a bill. Right, so if I click into this, we'll see it went to cost of goods sold. That transaction went to cost of goods sold. It was an expense for Amazon that went straight to cost of goods sold. Let me pull it up so you guys can see it. Clicking around. So right, it went to a category as opposed to going to an item. Okay. All right, going back to my project report here. So I have the $12.50 estimated costs. I have some actual costs in here, and then they have the difference. Okay. They also have the percentage difference, which to me is helpful, but not super helpful the way that they do the math here, right? Because it's saying I have $12.50 as my estimated cost. The difference is negative $7.50. So what is, I'm negative 150% to my $12.50. So it's not super helpful in how the math would be calculated there. What would be better is if it showed the $7.50 positive, right? And then how much was remaining to go, right? So because it's doing math based on a positive number and negative number, it's not really super helpful. But if this was a positive number, then that would be extremely helpful. Over here in the estimated income, so we had the $31.25, that's on a different estimate. We have actual income, which would be something that was on an invoice, right? And then what's the difference? The difference number over here, again, isn't super helpful to me. So what I would be doing with this report is dropping it into an Excel file and letting it help me to calculate what maybe my realized revenue should be, right? Because I have $1,250 in estimated costs, $500 in actual costs. That would show me my percentage of complete is 500 divided by 1,250, so 40%. So then my realized revenue should also be 40% of my estimated income. Okay, so that's one of the reports in the Project Center. We also can go to our Report Center, and you can type in here estimates. So they have a report that is estimates by customer, right, which is just showing you all of the different estimates opened by the customer. And you can see it's like in the Magic Wand type of format where we have pivots, groups, etc. The one thing to note, when you have some of these off-the-shelf reports, it's always great to go in and see how they got there. So in the columns, that's what I want to look at. They chose to use estimate under the sales area. And I know if you guys have watched my webinars before, that's not necessarily where I tell people to start. I tell people if we're doing anything transaction related, we want to use the, which you can't even do it. Oh, here it is, the transaction section down below here. You'll still get to the same net end result. You just have to filter by estimates in order to get there. But the transaction area has more fields, and I'll show you about that in a second. So this is using the estimates, right? They have the transaction ID, estimate date, transaction type. You have to have the transaction type on there in order to filter by transaction type, the estimate number, you know, memo name, etc. Okay. On here, you can also look at the filters. So obviously they don't really need transaction type on there because it's all the estimates only, but they do have the estimate status filter. So show me all estimates that are not rejected. Okay. That's what you're looking at. So it's always good to know what they're filtering off of the reports that they give over to you. And so again, how would we utilize this report? Possibly, you know, we could go in and see all of our pending estimates that we have and maybe sit down with our sales reps and decide what do we want to do with them. You can modify this report too. If you were using sales rep, you can add that column to this report, sales rep column, and then you can group by. So if I come in here I can start with this report, and then I can come in here and see the sales rep, right? I can come in here and see the sales rep. Can't add more than 20 columns. I'd have to remove one of the other ones. But once I check that off, then I would be able to group by sales rep as well if you didn't want to group by customer. Or you want to group by, you could group by multiple things, right? Group by sales rep, then group by customer. All right, so that's one of the off-the-shelf reports there. Then we have our other report that comes standard. We have our estimates in progress invoicing summary by customer. So this is one of the reports in QuickBooks Desktop that people ask for all the time, and it was kind of harder to get to. So it's great that they provide this in QuickBooks Online because you could see it on the transaction, but you couldn't see it in a report anywhere. And so this is what it's taking, is it's saying all estimates, right? So ABC Store has these three estimates. All estimates, it tells you the number, the status, the amount, the balance of the estimate, the invoiced amount, and what percentage invoiced it is, and therefore what amount's remaining. So this is something that in desktop people have asked for a very long time. And what they're trying to get to is they're trying to see, the reason it's so hard to get to this report is they're trying to see both cash and accrual basis basically on the same report, right? And so people have been asking for this for a while. So I love that they have this report. This is not a report that has a lot of customizations though, right? So it's not one of those magic flag reports. This is one that is hard coded. So there's not a lot of customization that we can do here. Okay. You can filter by customer, you know, change up the header footer, but there's not like a lot of extra rows that I could add in here or extra pieces of data I can add in here. But it's a super cool report, as is. So I shouldn't need to add that much stuff, that many things, too many things. Okay, so then the other thing that we want to talk about is create a new report. So again, when you think about the estimate, whenever I create a report around something, is I want to think about the fields that are there and what fields I need to see, right? And so I know I mentioned before about how when they had that standard report, they started with, over on the side here, they started under the sales category and they chose estimate. So if I come in here and I choose estimate, one of the things I want to do is I want to look at what is available. And I'm sorry on the size of this, the white space and how they do everything on these reports, I have no control over. So I apologize that it has to be so small. If I zoom in, it'll get worse. But over here on the side, if I choose estimate, you can see under the line items for estimate, I do have amount twice, right? And you can see one is a plus amount and one is, you know, the offset. So one is showing it all positive and one is showing it what it would be if it were a positive or negative debit or credit, basically. Split account, we do have quantity, we have balance quantity, so how many quantity remaining. We have account down here, linked attributes, account, split account, products. So you can see all these different things. But what you don't see when I look at it just from the estimate area on the line items or in any of the other areas is I don't see the cost field, the amount cost or the cost amount. That is not a field that you can get to by choosing estimate first, okay? So I'm just gonna go back because it's easier than figuring out how to uncheck and start a new report. So instead, if I come over here and I scroll down to transactions, you go to the other section and I choose transaction, I'm gonna start adding a couple things. Here's a transaction type, here's the transaction number, the transaction date, okay? But on line items, when I look at line items here, I can put the description. I have the invoice date, if there is an invoice date, quantity and rate, right? But I have the amount line and the cost amount. So I have both of those that I can add in if I do it from the transaction line. So if I'm trying to get something that subtotals cost versus amount, right, I need those to be there, okay? Let me add in a, customer, I'm looking for customer name, just so that I can group by those things. I can add in sales rep. Under customer, I can add in, what was that, a lead source. It's not under line items. Lead source is under custom fields, right? I can add all those columns in here. And once they're added on here, then that's where I can go and filter or group by these different things. So let me choose filter first. I'm going to filter by transaction type equals. I can search in here estimate, but fascinating, estimate is the very last one on the list somehow, for some reason. I did ask this the other day with the developers. I said, how do you decide what order these things go in? Because it doesn't make sense to me, the order sometimes. So here we have all the estimates, and then I can come in and group by, you know, lead source. Here are the estimates that have no lead source. Let me close this off. Here are all the estimates that came from Google, right? And you can add in the additional subtotals. But you can see in here how I have the amount line, right? That's the revenue amount. And then I also have in here the cost amount line. So I get to add that in as an additional field. Okay. So I don't know how helpful that'd be, because of course, the reports, I could say, you have to know what the goal of your report is. And that's one of the benefits of these Magic Wand reports. which I haven't seen the magic wands very much anymore, but the goal of these magic wand reports, right, is that you can dream something up. There it is. There's my magic wand. You can dream something up and think about what you want to report on, and then we can back into it, right, using some of these reports. Like, how can we get to that data? Where is that data? Okay, so hopefully that was helpful on pushing the boundaries on estimates and what we can do with estimate versus actual inside of QuickBooks Online. Again, a kickoff to job costing. In the future, I'm going to go over to answering any questions if you guys have questions. But in the future, next we're going to talk about job costing, right? So how we start adding the expenses to the jobs, time expenses, actual payroll expenses. We're going to talk about work in process a little bit, which those estimates really matter for that. And then also around manufacturing work in process in the future too. One of the things I don't have on the slide deck here is we are going to discuss as a secondary with job costing, how to job cost labor using what exists, right? Using time cards data that's inside of QuickBooks Online already. If you aren't aware, you can have estimated labor costs basically based on time card rates, okay, versus actual labor costs. So you can see that, based on the amount of time there, they'll pick up some costs for you. So how to utilize that to do, more stated labor than an actual labor cost. Okay, I'm not seeing anything come in, but I am here if you guys have anything additional. Otherwise, we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.